Hi, everyone. This is Mary Elliott, your host with the Bees News podcast. And I'm here today with a very special guest. Her name is Leslie. And boy, oh boy, she's had a long, lengthy journey with surgeries. And she's going to share what she's learned, the wisdom she's gained, and how she got to the other side from being stuck to receiving a success and happiness at the end of this journey.
So my name is Leslie Harrington, and I have had the wonderful experience of finding you on the Bee's Knees actual podcast, which transitioned into, I guess, what I would call life changing for the situation that I've been in, and having the firsthand experience with the 10X or X10. Sorry.
Everyone does that.
I know. I was trying to tag you guys in something, and I couldn't find 10X, and I couldn't find X10, and I'm like, what's going on? Yeah. So as far as intro, that's I guess what I've been recently experienced with you guys.
All right. So Leslie, start us from the beginning. Like, why were you listening to the Bees Knees podcast? What was going on?
I've had bad knees from the time I was 18. So when I was younger, I don't even remember why or how, but when I would go dancing and like 18 years old and I'd come home, I wouldn't be able to walk for a few days, like just pain in my kneecaps. And at the time I was told, my kneecaps weren't tracking correctly. They did what they call bilateral release. So I had a surgery performed on both knees at the same time back then, where they release like the cord and try to get your kneecaps to track straight. So after I had that surgery, I would say probably like 8 years, I was pretty active, I wouldn't say pain-free. I still had bad knees, but I wasn't I wasn't as in as much pain as I was initially. But I always was told by my doctors that I had the knees of an 80-year-old, and I just had to kind of ride out what I had, like wait till I could get a new set of wheels till I'm older. So I managed them. I was always active. Never like an athlete. I didn't play any particular sport, but I rode horses. And I didn't have pain while I rode horses. I was never able to dance or do anything that would cause residual pain after. And I spent most of my entire active like fitness life never doing lunges. I was never allowed to do leg extensions. Like there were certain things that my body just couldn't do, and I was always guided by do what doesn't hurt. So I avoided some of those things. So my go-to is squatting, step ups, things like that. I managed, and I was able to do a lot of really good activities to stay fit. And then fast forward, I would say probably about 15 to 20 years I did. I'm 52 now. At the time of my first surgeries, I was like just in college. So probably around 18, 19. But fast forward, I did probably 20 years of injections. Every 6 months, I did the hyaluronic acid injections. I did a lot of maintenance on my knees. No more surgeries. They don't like to continually go in there and clean up tissue because that, at some point there's just no tissue left to clean. So I was rocking and rolling, and I was waiting till I got older to look at options. And one day I was in an Orange Theory class last year. I guess it was 2022 in October. And I went to step up. I had a weight in my hand. When I went to step back down, something cracked loudly and I fell to the ground. And I was like, oh, that was a very unfamiliar pain. When you have bad knees, you have familiar pain. You know what's normal, what's not, what's kind of discomfort, what you might have tweaked. This was not any of that. This was something just happened and I don't know what. And it turned out all the osteophytes and the kind of tracking system that my body had built in my knee joint had basically fractured into pieces. So I wasn't able to bend my knee. Thank God I could straighten it because I could stand up and walk out of there. But I couldn't bend it past probably about 40 degrees. So I couldn't get in my car. I couldn't get off the couch, none of the basic movement. And this was initially, and I had to travel for work the 2 days later, and it was like a big meeting thing. So I showed up in my orthopedic. That was on a Sunday, on Monday morning. And I'm like, I thought when people get cartilage caught back there and sometimes it gets caught, you can pop it in and out. I'm like, go ahead, fix this, and he's like, that's not how this works. So I had by noon on Monday, I had an MRI. I had already seen my doctor, and I'd already gotten the result that I had this debris that was blocking my knee from bending. So we went with that same week, later that week. I think it had like 5 days for pre-op and everything to go in there and get it out of there so that I could have functional movement. And I was doing really well. I was like I said, I could squat, I could step up, I could do things. So I was like, just get me back to where I was before. But once they took that bone out, I had no more, like my body had designed that bone to kind of keep my kneecap in place. And at that point, my kneecap was now like kind of just floating in there, and the bone on bone was just, it was so painful. So now I'm like, oh my gosh, this is not doable. So then I had to look into the options of, do I do a partial? Do I do a full? I don't know how much depth you want me to get into, but I did attempt a partial. I worked with a surgeon that was supposedly very reputable. He went in there and he did not put the plastic on my kneecap. So we did just the patellofemoral, which was a partial of just that, the joint of the femur bone and the patella. And I basically came out with half of a partial. He didn't put plastic. So they were like, yeah, it's common not to do the plastic. I'm like, it's common if you have cartilage. I had no cartilage. He claimed that my kneecap was too small and that they weren't able to shave it down enough to put the plastic piece on. So I basically had a failed surgery. And again, now I'm bone on metal. And again, no osteophytes to keep it tracking. So it was now floating in there, just rubbing on metal. And that was excruciating. And that's kind of what I thought I was stuck with. And then fast forward now, I ended up ultimately having a total knee replacement on that one knee. So I found a doctor that did the revision successfully. I came out of that surgery. I had definitely some mobility on the range of motion early on, but it was probably closer to like 110, 115. It was like doable. And then I finally got to a place at like the 5-month mark that my knee was doing things that my other knee couldn't. And I was feeling the benefit and the final like excitement of having a new knee. So I decided to do the other knee in this last month in December. So about a month ago. And in this one, I thought it would be easy breezy because I didn't have 2 prior surgeries. And I proved wrong very quickly. And that's when I found you. But after I had the first knee replacement, I did have a significant amount of mental blockages. I had very bad muscle guarding. I had spasms, Charlie horses, constant discomfort. I never could find a place of peace. For 3 solid months, no sleep. It was just, and it had nothing to do with my knee joint. My knee joint was working. The incision was good. The surgery went well. It was all the other muscles and all around the area that my brain and my body, they just didn't want to connect. So I suffered with that. And after the first one, it took over 3 months to kind of subside, and probably closer to the 5 to really feel like I'd overcome it somewhat. Like my brain just sort of shut off. And so this time I was like, okay, if this happens again, I have some tools because I was doing some shockwave therapy. I mean, I spent so much money trying to find relief between acupuncture and cupping and, physical therapy stuff and seeing different doctors. Everything would help a little bit, but not a lot. So this past one, I did immediately run into the issues. And they were actually twofold. I mean, my brain was just fried. It wasn't having another surgery. And I was stuck at probably about what I thought to be 90 degrees when we first spoke. And it turned out it was 80 when I got the chair. So that I was researching about muscle guarding. I went on to podcasts. I'm a regular podcast listener. I had looked at a lot of other people that had total knee. And when I found this, I had heard a couple of podcasts about just muscle guarding in general, but I kept hearing the X10 repeated, and I didn't really put the two together that it was, one and the same that was hosting the podcast. And so I went online and I think I sent a note and said, please help. And then you reached out to me and, that's the magic started to happen.
So, all right. So now this is your second knee. You realize, oh my gosh, I'm guarding again. I think you found me 3 weeks into it, right? For the second knee. This was we're talking
Yeah.
about your left knee, right? Because your right knee was the one you had several surgeries on.
Yes.
Okay. So now you get the X10. And what are you thinking? The X10 arrives.
I'm 3 weeks in. I get the X10, they deliver it. It was so easy. You and I spoke. We, you kind of educated me on how they do it, the delivery, the days, how many days. Kind of got a better understanding of what the actual machine does and why that passive movement is better for. I mean, I couldn't even use the strap and pull my own leg. The pain was so excruciating that it was blocking me from all of my physical therapy activities. I couldn't do the basic stuff, which with TKR, everything is bending and straightening. And, so I was freaking out. The worst thing I could imagine was going under again and having to have the manipulation, to break up scar tissue. And so I was panicking a little bit. They delivered the chair to my home. He set me up. I spoke with my coach before. She was wonderful. And then I had my first coach call with her the day after, and we did the whole session together while I was in it. And she kind of walked me through what I should be feeling and anticipating and things like that. And it was very user friendly, and I picked up a lot on some of my, I guess, instinctual cues as to why, like, it was very interesting to me why it worked in the chair and not other places. And it's still kind of fascinating to me. In fact, I was concerned about when I gave it up, how I was going to maintain the motion. So I think I've since understood more about that because of the support of the back of the way that it holds your leg up. And then for me, I don't know if I learned a lot, and I probably know more about knee replacement, I like to admit, about open chain, right? So when I have a closed chain and my foot is pressing, so if I'm on a leg press, I can do a leg press much more pain-free than I could if you asked me to do a squat in the air. And then if I'm laying down and I'm just doing a leg lift in the air, again, that's open chain. I have nothing like to press up against. So there's a lot of pain involved there for me. But if you sit me in that chair and you put something behind it and something under it, and it's just moving on its own, I don't have the pain. So
beautiful.
yeah, it was really interesting.
Well, thanks for explaining that. The X10 is closed chain, so that's what she's referring to. Your foot sits on a base, on a pedal, right? So that helped comfort you too, right? It helped you. Okay, great.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
And then
And I think right from the start, they kind of measured me in a way that they were like very specific about not lifting your hip, not contorting your body to allow for movement. And in the first knee replacement, I was able to do a revolution on the bike in the first week, and I maintained it even through all of the pain, but I was hurting very badly in my hip and my thing because I wasn't doing it properly. And so this time I didn't get to do a revolution on the bike till last week, which was 2 weeks into the chair, or close to. And that's because once I got to the range that I needed to, the revolution became seamless. And I hadn't done it prior to that. But when I had mentally known that I had already exceeded the 115 on the chair, I was waiting to kind of try the revolution until I had 115. I know I probably could have done it incorrectly, closer to 110, but so that was a really exciting time. And he knew that I had been continually increasing my range through that process versus, pulling on it. And he was forbidden to touch me. He's not allowed to push my knee. So he loved it because, I was progressing in lieu of, needing his help with that. So.
Oh, that's awesome. So you started about 80, you're thinking, on the X10. And then I saw your last number is 122. Am I right about that? And that took what, 2, 3 weeks? How many weeks?
So I hit 122 before the 2 week mark. And then I've since gotten to 125. So what I discovered is I would get to a certain number and then I would sort of regress. And then that number would be like my more comfortable number, like the next day or the day after that. So like if I hit 120 on Thursday, by Saturday, 120 was sort of easy. But I wasn't at 120 on Thursday, right? I just hit it and I was like, yay. But it was a stretch and it was a pull and it was giving myself a little bit extra push without hurting myself and setting myself back. There was only one day, actually it was the 122 day, that I set myself back because I think I pushed And the next day I was super sore and I got a little swollen. And I said, you know what? It's fine. Just don't go for the 122 today. And I didn't for one day. And then the following day I hit the 125.
Wonderful. Well, how exciting. So functionally, what have you noticed? So in what, 3 weeks time that you've had the X10, would you say?
Yeah. So today will be 3 weeks. And they're
Okay.
um I noticed that first of all, with the 80 degrees, I could barely walk. I was walking still with the walker. I was limping, like very uncomfortably limping. I think whether my knee was bending or not, I wasn't allowing it to bend because I was too scared of the pain. So my walking immediately improved. My sleeping improved because I could bend my knee a little bit during sleep. Um, and then of course the revolution on the bike, but just my everyday getting around, it was dramatically improved by every degree that I gained because I was so stiff and so limited prior. So that piece for me was tremendous. The walking, I mean, if I was on my walker and holding on and my brain felt safe and I took really slow, intentional steps, I could walk sort of slowly with a normal gait. If I got off that walker, I looked like a zombie and, something from Walking Dead. It was like swinging the leg, like all kinds of weird stuff with the hip. Like I just had no normalcy in my walk.
And now you do. Now you can walk and you're,
Yeah, now I do. I have to remind myself sometimes that I can bend the knee.
oh, sure.
I start walking and I'll be stiff and I'll be like, you can bend it. It's just stiff. Like I have to make sure that I'm mindful about it. And I have to really put full weight into the leg in order for it to not hurt. I mean, honestly, it hurts worse if I try to go light on it.
Oh, great to know, right? So listen,
Yeah.
everyone out there, right?
Well, actually, the reason I learned that is on my other knee. My other knee popped a lot, and I found that if I limped on it on the other leg, which means that I was putting weight in that leg, it wouldn't pop. So because I was limping so much on my other knee, that knee stopped popping. And now I realize if I start limping on that leg again, or instead of limping, just walking intentionally with the pressure under both feet, I stopped popping in both legs. But
Oh,
if I walk like
fantastic.
too light on one foot, I pop. It's weird.
Wow. So you're learning a lot about your
What
body
happens
throughout
when you
this,
become a
right?
robot?
Well, gosh, now you have both knees right behind you. So what are you looking forward to now, Leslie? What's life look like now?
Oh gosh, I'm still, struggling with the sleep. The spasms still do happen. They're definitely better quicker than they were on the other one. So in the bending, definitely, I learned that three things. I thought for sure that my bending would be the best at a certain time of day. It was never the same. Sometimes it was the morning, sometimes it was the afternoon, sometimes it was the night. I could get my max bend. So I highly recommend, no matter how you feel, to sit in that chair and just go with the flow, because it could be that I did over 200 word search puzzles. If I'm talking on the phone with my friend and I'm distracted, the other day I did a meeting in the chair with my computer, and that's one of the highest I got. When I'm super distracted and my brain is focused on something else, my knee can bend. My knee's happy, my brain's happy. So the distraction was really important, and to make sure I sat in there, even if I felt like I was so stiff that I didn't want to because I didn't think it was going to help. It always helped. And I always did it before I went and laid in bed for X number of hours. Like I wanted the movement before bed and I wanted the movement right when I got up. And then also not to limit yourself to full sessions. Like I got up and grabbed up my lemon water and sat there for 10 minutes and did very basic 90 degrees just to get blood flow. So those are all things I kind of adopted along the way and kind of became a little addicted to. So now I'm gonna miss it.
Oh, and I'm sure it's going to miss you too, Leslie. We're going to miss you. All right. So now, okay. So any other advice you would like to share with people out there that maybe having a tough time recovering?
I'm in a group on Facebook and I see a lot of like similar struggles because everyone has probably heard, oh, my grandma had knee replacement and she did great. She had them both done at the same time and she's playing tennis and pickleball by the time it's that whole statement makes me like, so like, what is wrong with me? I'm 52 years old and this was the hardest experience I've ever been through. um I had to learn to give myself grace. I had to learn to like really, I literally caught myself talking to my knee, trying to reassure myself, my brain, I know it wants to help me, but it's just doing me such a disservice. I had the brain things are real, and I can explain to you because you and I talked in depth about it when we first talked. I had a friend that had the surgery 2 days after me, and she's 10 years, wait, she's 70. She's 18 years older than me. And she had no issues, no issues. And it's just, don't compare yourself really to others, because if I sat there and let that kind of keep me back, it definitely would hinder my progress.
Wow,
So
great advice, right? Great advice, right?
yeah, it's very, very, very individual.
Yep, and everybody's had their own life with their own need, right? So you can't compare. No one is exactly like you. I don't care how you slice it,
Yeah.
right? No one's had the exact same experiences and the same life you have with your knees. So be mindful of that, everyone, right? She's right. Don't compare yourself. Go at a healthy pace that works for you, right? And get the help you need, whether it's an X10 or something else, right? There's always a solution, right? Always a solution.
And it's a very emotional process. I learned the first time and the second time I went through like periods of depression. I cried a lot. And I remember sometimes sitting in that chair and like thinking like, this is so much more than just like you and I talked, like it felt more than just pain in my knee, right? There was like other things that I felt like I was carrying that was just like heavy, and it felt like it was like my body's excuse to kind of like, it's, to me it was sort of layered, and I just associated all the trauma I had in those, and you and I laughed before this call. You said, so you had 4 surgeries. I said, I actually had 5, because in between the 2 I had torn my shoulder from using my arms to push myself to get up everywhere. I have toilet rails on my toilet at 52 years old.
Oh, I just lost you again, Leslie. Oh my gosh, you poor thing. If you can hear me, you've gone through so much, honestly. Oh, you're back.
I know, I keep saying it, phrase it.
So toilet rolls at 50, I mean,
I had to, yeah,
toilet.
the toilet rails. I was saying how I feel like the compounded effect of the surgery after surgery after surgery, like my body was like, I can't do this anymore. And it, it took a little time for it to, and what's funny is when all of the cramping and the muscle spasms like dissipated on the right side, it not only happened what felt like overnight, it happened and then like my strength was back. Like all the things that I'd been working on with the trainers, and I was doing muscle stimulation and all these things, I was like so debilitated. But when I could finally do things again, it was like I could pick up weights and I could do things heavier, and like everything just kind of worked again. It wasn't that it was a strength thing. It was a brain thing. It was definitely a brain thing.
Well, I imagine too, the X10 showing you your results too and making it this whole process doable calmed you down, right? Considerably. I can only
Oh,
imagine, right?
I
Yeah.
think when I saw the progress each day, and my coach had indicated just that she sees a variety of different progressions. And she said sometimes it takes a few days before you kind of feel comfortable and your brain settles into it. And I was kind of getting like 2 degrees each day. I was picking stuff up pretty quickly. So then when I got to like that 120 place and I felt like I was getting a little bit set back, I was like, why am I not getting 2 degrees every day like I'm supposed to, that's where I had to take a breath and say, you know what, take a step back, honor what your body needs right now. And then I gained 3 the next day. And that's where I had to learn that. But I think too, like reminding yourself too, like you just have to get the bend. It doesn't have to feel perfect. It doesn't have to be a squat. It doesn't have to be a leg press. Like for me, I'm like, just get the bend so the scar tissue doesn't build. And that's where I was like, go through the motions. I had 2 weeks off work. I committed to doing it. I did all the hours. I was really dedicated to it. and it was every ounce of reward. It was worth every single penny. It was worth the investment of the time. And the coaches, I mean, Kim and I could just sit and chat through a whole session. And sometimes we would chat, not in a session, and we would just talk outside of being in the chair itself, but through, the process. And her knowledge was over the top, very reassuring, helping me understand, like, that I'm not the only one, that has like all these brain issues.
Oh, 100%. I think that's really, really important to know you're not alone when you're doing something like this, especially when you're challenged, right? To know you have support. And when Leslie's mentioning coach, with the X10, you get the machine plus assign a personal telemedicine coach. So that's who she's referring to, everybody out there, just in case you're wondering who she was speaking of, but that's her X10 coach. Okay. Well, gosh, what an inspiring journey you've had. Look at you, right? I mean, you went through a lot just even before you had this knee done. Now with this knee too, you encounter the same challenges really kind of sort of again, right? And you overcame them, right? That's incredible. So
I need
everyone,
the help
right?
of the X10.
Yeah.
I honestly don't know where I'd be without it, because the pain was, I would say, substantially greater than the last one. And the last one was no picnic.
My goodness,
It was
honestly.
it was and it was so bad at such a small angle that I was panicking. I'm like, how am I going to get this knee to bend? So I am super grateful that I found you and I found this, and all the things I learned along the way too, because the breathing, and all the different techniques that I used to try to work through, even just while I was on the chair. And it was really nice because Kim reminded me, my dogs, I had a little coffee table that I had the legs cut off of the coffee table so that my little one used to sit next to me in my work chair, and she would lay. I have a dog bed velcroed to the top of the coffee table, and so she would lay in the in the little dog bed, but she was even with me, so I could pet her while we were in the chair. So I said, "Oh my God, I forgot I had that." So I whipped that out, and they every night I did my thing, and all the hours I was in that chair, one of them would be up there, sitting in that bed next to me.
Oh, pets are amazing, right? They say dogs take on the stress of the family. They are so beneficial and loving, right? Oh
Sometimes
gosh,
just
yeah.
petting him, like that would be calming. Like I could be on a good call with a friend. I could be crying because I'm having a bad day. Like all the things that took me away from like this machine just doing what it needed to do was just so like helpful for me to get out of my own head.
Yeah, yep, that helps, right? Sometimes our mind does get in the way of things, but that's all right. I'm telling you, Leslie, you overcame a lot. You should be really proud of yourself, right? Pat yourself on the back, right? Now, what are you looking forward to now that both knees are done? Yay, and you're recovered. So what are you excited to do
Well, I
next?
was doing my vision board for the year, and one of the things I have is like all these pictures of like having quads, because my whole life I've had these like little stick legs with like no muscle around my quads. So it's building quads. One day I want to be able to dance and not have to not walk for days after. By no means am I a good dancer, and clearly I've had little practice my whole life. But the little simple things. My goal when I went to trainers before this, I'm like, I just need to be able to get up and down off the toilet. And they laugh at me. I'm like, but you laugh, but that is a squat. If I can get off the toilet, it means I can get off the couch. It means I can get in my car. It means I can, go to the gym and do more things than I can normally do. I want to be able to do things without using my arms to constantly pick me up and pull me in, so it was that simple goal that means so much, that's where,
Well, I tell you what, I am so happy for you, Leslie. This is a beautiful story all the way around. And I'm sure life is just going to continue to get brighter and brighter for you, honestly. And thank you. Look at all the time that it's taken for you to recover both knees. And look how precious she is. She still took the time out to share her story with all of you. So be inspired, right? Help is on the way. There's help out there. So if you're stuck, no worries, right? You can overcome this.
yeah.
Right.
I thank you, Mary, for all of your help and guidance.